Item number, SCP-2530. Object class, safe. Special containment procedures. A surveillance system has been installed in the interior and exterior of SCP-2530, and all entryways have been barricaded to prevent instances of SCP-2530-A from exiting. All trespassers are to be subdued and administered amnestics by agents from Surveillance Post 935. Any alterations in behavior are to be reported to the current SP head for revisions in containment procedures. Description: SCP-2530 is an abandoned warehouse located in Detroit, Michigan. Records indicate the building was owned by before being purchased by the Hudson Motor Company, where it was used from 1909 to 1912 before relocation to a larger factory. SCP-2530 was vacant for several years before developing anomalous properties. SCP-2530's interior has acoustics similar to a large, empty chamber. Despite the presence of indoor structures and machinery, external sound is unable to penetrate the interior of SCP-2530. Open doorways and windows are most notably affected, which sound reflects off as if there was a physical barrier. Sounds created by instances of SCP-2530-A and other entities and objects occasionally produce inconsistent reverberations. Researchers have theorized that the presence of machinery in SCP-2530 plays a factor in this, and it may have been intentional specifically for all instances. SCP-2530-A 1-17 consists of several entities consisting of both artificial and organic material, mainly synthetic parts and mammalian organs. The artificial materials at each instance is composed of are mundane by themselves, and there are no indications regarding each instance's origin or development. All organic material functions independently from its robotic components, though it is unclear if each instance is self-sustaining or receiving energy from another source. Each instance inhabits various areas within SCP-2530, where it engages in repetitive behavior that often pertains to their appearance. All instances of SCP-2530-A will depart to the main production floor in SCP-2530 if any individual enters and remains in said room for approximately 15 seconds. At this point, each instance will arrange themselves inside the perimeter of the room and will begin to perform a musical piece, which is 2 minutes and 47 seconds in length. Each instance will return to their original locations within SCP-2530 shortly after the performance's end. Human tissue from each instance has shown similarities to several sets of people, mostly families. It has been concluded that the DNA found in instances of SCP-2530 may be that of children from several married couples, though all families deny having one or more children, and no birth records have been found for any supposed individual. Addendum 2530-A1. Instances of SCP-2530. Designation description: SCP-2530-A2-A. Albino Acinonyx jubatus, cheetah, with an inverted head. All other body parts are constructed with copper wiring. Minuscule eyes have been observed to look out from the instance's torso when activated. Produces various clicking and grinding noises. SCP-2530-A 5A wooden mannequin torso of 3 meters in height, covered in 8 humanoid mouths. Each mouth continuously whispers "Oh Ananias, I think of thee" when not activated. SCP-2530-A 13E with Macron, a rectangular frame constructed with several fragments of sphalerite 1, suspending a cylinder consisting of infantile thumbs. 2 limbs originating from the frame strike the drum to provide a sound similar to a synthetic kick drum. SCP-2530-A 15A, a deceased brown greater Galago, a Ptolemy crassicaudatus, with a human fetus situated in an open cavity on the side of its body. The tail of the Galago is composed of various pieces of glass and is dragged on a nearby conveyor belt to produce sound. SCP-2530-A 17 is an animatronic Japanese child in a fetal position. Instance's skin consists entirely of Youth's epidermis, sings the main vocals when activated. SCP-2530-A 3 and SCP-2530-A 6. Addendum 2530. MP3. The following is a recording of SCP-2530 when activated. 2530 Core Rec 03,021,983 miles per third. Incident 2530-B, 1 March 13, 1978. 4 hours after the anomaly's discovery, an unidentifiable individual had entered SCP-2530 and inspected several instances of SCP-2530-A. This was recorded with a preliminary surveillance system. At that time, HMCL Leifson was conversing via handheld transceiver with Agent Montalvo regarding possible modifications to entryways within SCP-2530. The individual exited the camera's view shortly before SCP-2530-A 17 stood up and walked up behind Agent Montalvo unnoticed. It's unknown if the individual activated or provoked SCP-2530-A 17. After analysis of the monologue's content, it's been postulated that the individual was speaking through it. Surveillance footage shows Agent Montalvo being grabbed and struck from behind by SCP-2530-A 17 and dragged to the main production floor. SCP-2530-A 17 had begun to sing immediately after disabling both of Montalvo's legs through force. SCP-2530-A 17 sat down in front of Agent Montalvo and continued to sing. The following log begins shortly after Montalvo is released. Begin log, 1943, March 13, 2019. SCP-2530-A 17. You found ruins of my young heart's past. Prod with pride, weeps unheard. Cage, inscribe, mindless herd. Agent Montalvo. Fuck, Leifson, I need backup. 2530-A just broke my legs. Both my damn legs. SCP-2530-A 17. The heartless men, they wish to learn more. Stoop down low, they will never know. All my sins, crowd round a lonely hunter. All my sins, croons on, and thrumming further. Agent Montalvo. All instances have assembled here. No further hostility. Leifson. SCP-2530-A 17. I watched the cruel boy split swiftly into pelted stones. Pelted stones. Can't run home. Broken bones. The group of taunters melt. Cuss I gaze through as they laugh. Laugh all day. Laugh all night. Falling down. Through the light. SCP-2530-A 17. All their pain. A gathering of hate. Melting rain. Metal meets flesh and taint. In their faults. They'll sing all day. Animals. They'll sing all day. Agent Montalvo remains silent, though grunting and shallow breathing is heard. SCP-2530-A 17. Where they are. Mistakes made from a child's play. Fallen stars. Father's tears and mother's pray. All too far. Didn't mean to end it this way. A gasp from Montalvo is audible. It is assumed that Montalvo was grabbed. SCP-2530-A-17 is no longer singing. SCP-2530-A-17. But it's fine. For you hunters, I will leave these children here. I killed them unwittingly, and I tried to fix them so many years ago. But now it works, because someone will always be there to listen to them. Thanks, you always seem to be doing me favors. End log. 1950. After all instances of SCP-2538 returned to their original positions, Agent Montalvo was recovered and claimed he was unable to remember the event occurring, and was unable to explain his leg injuries when notifying HMCL Leifson. The intruding unknown individual and SCP-2530-A17's behavior are currently being investigated. Access granted. Various anomalies, including SCP-2530, contain substantial evidence supporting the involvement of Green King. All anomalies produced through Green King are currently being put under review, in preparation for removal from standard Foundation containment, to emphasize research and isolation of the anomaly and determining information on Green King. Neutralization has been authorized should an anomaly prove uninformative, or is determined to further prevent the neutralization of Green King. Item number, SCP-1530. Object class, Euclid. Previously safe. Special containment procedures. SCP-1530 is currently contained 120 meters from Site-09. A 3-meter high chain link fence is to surround the perimeter of SCP-1530, 20 by 20 meters, and is to be displayed as government property to discourage trespassers. Request to use forced entry to access SCP-1530 pending. As of March 10, 1988, SCP-1530-2 and -3 are to be kept in separate humanoid containment chambers. Required furnishing only includes bedding, though any requests from SCP-1530-2 and -3 be submitted to Head Researcher Reich for consideration. Tranquilizers are to be utilized upon any signs of distress from either instance. Interviews are to be conducted through D-Class personnel and must be approved by 2 Level 3 personnel. SCP-1531 is currently kept on life support and provided with medical attention. Description: SCP-1530 is a 2-story abandoned house located in the redacted forest. The exterior of the building shows wear and weather inconsistent with long-term negligence. All entryways have been barricaded from the interior, preventing personnel access. SCP-1530 will occasionally emit various sounds from within. When this occurs, its windows and front door will repeatedly slam open and close. The following sounds have been recorded from SCP-1530: barking and whining from a dog, yowling from a domestic cat, smashing and crushing of materials such as glass and wood, screaming and cursing from a male human estimated to be around 40 to 50 years in age. SCP-1530 was discovered during the search for D-2934 after testing with SCP-249. His tracking device indicated that he had entered SCP-1530, though immediately stopped transmitting reading 16 seconds after entry. Communication with D-2934 and other entities within SCP-1530 has proven ineffective. Addendum 1530-B. During an active phase of SCP-1530, security personnel noticed that the front door of SCP-1530 did not open. It was then noted that the front entryway was unlocked, and Agent Bertkey and Agent Montalvo were sent in accordingly. Begin log. 2:24 p.m. Dr. Reich, you are now clear to enter. Agent Bertkey. Understood. Agent Bertkey and Montalvo enter a living room, with a set of stairs to the left. A portion of what is assumed to be a bedroom is visible across the hall on the right. Agents begins to approach while preparing firearms. Agent Montalvo. Nasty. There's dust and shit everywhere. It's covering the floor, the furniture, everything. None of the stuff was touched in a while. Kinda strange, considering that we've been hearing this stuff being broken for days. Agent Bertkey. The furniture itself looks pretty old. 70s stuff. Hey, Agent Montalvo. What? Agent Bertkey. There's a small patch of dried blood next to these stairs. Almost missed it. Looks like someone forgot to clean up after themselves. Agent Montalvo. Big surprise. Who wouldn't expect to find blood in another one of those generic spooky houses like this? Control. Agents, please keep moving. As Agent Bertkey and Montalvo enter the living room, barking can be heard as well as coughing and hacking. Agent Bertkey. What the fuck? There's a cat and a dog, I think. They're just sitting there. Agent Montalvo. Hold up. There's a man here. Jesus. D-2934 is seen to be severely injured with a multitude of scratches and tears in the epidermis, most notably on the face. A domestic cat and dog are both standing on the man and are also injured. D-2934. Ha ha ha. You guys finally showed up? Welcome to my new home. End log. 2:27 p.m. Revised description, April 18, 1990. SCP-1530-1 is a Caucasian man of approximately 50 years in age, formerly D-2934. He was found with several injuries to the eyes and chest, as well as mutilation of the genitalia and several tears on the lips. All injuries originated from SCP-1530-2 and SCP-1530-3. SCP-1530-1 displays no anomalous properties, but was found alive inside SCP-1530. SCP-1531 is currently recovering in Foundation custody and is also being treated for delusional behavior. SCP-1530 SCP-1532 is a male Calico 1 cat. SCP-1530-2 has sustained 2 major injuries, a large laceration on the underside, exposing SCP-1530-2's abdominal cavity, and the removal of SCP-1532's lips. It also displays an anomalous anatomy, specifically in areas afflicted by its injuries. This includes increased mass in the mandible, as well as in the thoracic and lumbar vertebrae. It also lacks a caudal vertebrae. The muscle system corresponds with the anomalous areas, showing alterations in the serratus magnus, latissimus dorsi, masseter muscle, and zygomaticus. SCP-1533 is a female beagle, a lower classification of Canis lupus familiaris. Its injuries include mutilation of one eye and lacerations across the back, rendering the former non-functional. SCP-1530-3 contains one anomaly regarding its lack of lungs and liver. The absence of both organs does not affect its living ability. Both SCP-1530-2 and SCP-1533's injuries do not appear to recover, causing continuous pain. SCP-1530-3 displays polarized behavior, as it will act hostile towards its environment for several minutes before suddenly becoming timid. SCP-1530-2 also displays this trait, and will act with either apathy or hostility. SCP-1530-2 and SCP-1530-3 both display sapience, but only SCP-1530-2 has willingly communicated with personnel upon initial containment. This is accomplished by scratching words onto a material with its claws, due to damage to its vocal cords. Interview Log 1530-B. The following is the interview conducted after SCP-1530-2's intelligence was recognized. Begin Log, 6:30 p.m. Agent Mode. Why did you attack that D-Class? SCP-1530-2. It's quite simple, really. He's the real danger. That is to say, Agent Mode. So you're saying that it was him that hurt you in SCP-1530-3. SCP-1530-2. 3-second pause. Yes, it was him. He hurt us. And he killed Josephine. He hurt me and Willow. Agent Mode. Who is Josephine? SCP-1530-2. She kept us. We were her family. The only ones there for her. She ignored our terms to serve. She simply wanted company. I understand why Ananias would give her the oath. She was the only master. SCP-1530-2 crosses out the word one we had. I feel sick, spewing all these compliments. I miss her, that's all. Agent Mode. Alright, do you know where this Josephine is? SCP-1530-2. I haven't a clue. When he intruded, we were occupied, and didn't see where the man placed her. I would assume he put her upstairs. Agent Mode. Thank you for your cooperation. We'll take care of the body, if we find it. 7-second pause while SCP-1530-2 paws at its intestines. SCP-1530-2. Please do. She's needed this, years ago. End log, 6:58 p.m. SCP-1530-2 has refused to elaborate further on said statements, and no interview is possible at the time. It is assumed SCP-1530-3 is also sapient and capable of communication, but is currently non-responsive to all personnel. Addendum 1530-C. The second floor of SCP-1530 contained various pieces of furniture standard for a rural home. A corpse of an unidentifiable female was also found in the bedroom closet, holding a journal containing various dates and entries. A black envelope was also found within the journal, containing a letter bearing paw prints from both SCP-1530-2 and SCP-1530-3. All individuals that attempt to read the textual portion of the letter claim that it's impossible to do so, though they are unable to explain why. February 1st, 1997. It's a cold day. I keep thinking that there's something walking from the woods to share a meal by the fire. The cold is scratching at the windows, and I'm alone. But after all that I faced, I don't care. I've made a home, and it will stay my home for as long as I can keep it. February 2nd, 1997. This envelope with paw prints and notes inside. The one artifact from Ananias. I guess I've already been there and back, haven't I? Now I finally decided to use it. It'll take a while, but it shouldn't be any trouble to conjure the two entities attached to the prints. Maybe I'll get lucky, and they'll be able to speak. It'll be nice to learn how to converse again. March 7th, 1997. Their names are Salix and Willow. One wily and sharp, the other one silent, a follower. Salix looks upon me as an old ex-wife which I can laugh at in the gutter. Coming off as old is the last thing I want. I'll be sure to work on that. Willow is quiet. Reminds me of when things were simpler. Damn nostalgia. Dying behind me wherever I go. March 21st, 1997. They don't want to do anything. They acknowledge me when I give them meals, but they spend their time alone. I'll let them take their time. They'll get bored eventually. I sincerely hope this doesn't end with either one of them becoming like Ashton, all by himself, alone in that cave, too stubborn to admit his losses. All he does now is play his games. On another note, I don't see why reperforming the ritual monthly is necessary to retain their servitude. I'm sure it's for their benefit. March 29th, 1997. I've just discovered they are both bound by literally hundreds of rules. I've gone and switched some around. Physical contact, escape routes, and no air created from death. I don't know if I enforced this upon them on accident. Hopefully this'll make things easier. April 1st, 1997. The sky was bright. Strolled outside. The trees crinkled their greetings. It was nice to see Willow enjoying the sun, while Salix moped along beside me, seeing how nice it is outside. I don't understand why I can't just become a part of it. The hunters are taking an awfully long time to find me. I wonder if they think I've died. September 13th, 1997. I haven't the time to write. They're waiting for me outside. A hike is what we've planned. October 28th, 1997. It's a cold day. They're both asleep by the fire. It's radiating glow. The cold is pawing at the windows, but I am not without a family. The following note was found on the last page at the end of the notebook. A man dressed in orange and numbers from the woods. He intruded upon me. He was scared, lost, and alone. He was me, before. That's why I let him get me. See, I've given up running. That's why I couldn't kill him. Yes, maybe he didn't lose hope yet, but now I'm sorry. I'm sorry we never got to leave together, even if it was to be only us three. All those I knew had already disappeared, and I'm sorry for leaving the two of you for them. One day you'll be free. I love you both. On the reverse side of the entry, and to the hunters, if they find this, do what you want. Don't hurt Salix and Willow. Your agent has already hurt them. I'm sure they'll repay him. At least, you've chased and killed people like me for so long. Even when a shred of normality began to show for me, you still tracked me down. What do you want from me? From the hundreds like me, not all of us want to use our power for ourselves. Greed is not inherent. Fuck you and your containment. You steal freedom, you deceive and lie. You destroy. I never even got to say goodbye. Site 120 wasn't a quiet place. For practically as long as it had existed, it was always filled with one noise or another. At first, it was the shuffling of pages in the newly discovered library of SCP-5292 the site was later built on, filled with frantic attempts at comprehending its ununderstandable nature. Then, it was the firing of guns and slings of magic triumvirate terrorists used in a final and desperate attempt to burn it all down. And then, for almost a century, it was the walks and talks of myriad men and women employed by the facility, trying to bring the two worlds together. But tonight, there was nothing to be heard within its endless confines. Dr. Daniel Ashworth sighed with exhaustion, noticing the surprising silence as he took yet another sip from the tea mug, putting it back on his office's desk as the taste of the hot liquid reached his brain. It was late at night, late even for the insomniac he was, and it felt like everyone except him already left the building. Even the never-resting and almost ancient figure of their resident linguist, Dr. Alistair Vemhoff, was already asleep. There weren't many nights like this, but when they arrived, they always came as a surprise, piercing the seeming routine of standard Foundation work as sharply as a spear. If he was honest, Ashworth wasn't even sure how he ended up still at work so late. But if he had to guess, he'd say it was the magic work. Weaving spells had never been easy, but the renewal of the 120's protection seals always took literal ages, and it so happened tonight was the day his calendar so unfortunately marked as the renewal day, and he had to make do. For one final moment that night, Ashworth gazed at the complex and frankly ridiculous previously invisible magical patterns laying throughout his office, now made fully noticeable by a simple detection spell he cast when he had begun his work. Daniel smiled and nodded to himself quietly, proud of the work he was able to finish tonight. And yet, despite this pride, Daniel couldn't fully enjoy it. He never could. The whisper of a million wrongs he committed during his duty could not let him go, as much as he thought of himself as a man free of his past. Ashworth shook his head, closing his eyes quietly. It was time to go, he thought as he let those sins be buried for one day more. Giving the room a final look in an attempt to see if he hadn't left anything important behind, he stretched silently, ending it with a characteristic sigh. Despite the thaumaturge's prolonged youth, something within his back clicked in a manner that just felt wrong, forcing an unpleasant grimace to enter his face. With one hand on his spine, he walked forward, clicking the panel next to the doors in the room with the intent to open them. They complied, and that was when the rest of reality stopped existing. Everything outside the small cube he called his office was no more, now replaced by an infinite void of darkness and patterns beyond recognition. If Ashworth wasn't frozen in place by the horror of what he looked into, he'd scream, but paralyzed by the horrors of the outside of reality, he could not. And then the world-shaped hole gained two green eyes. Preparing for the worst, he pushed off the single and obvious memory of what had happened with Nat all those years ago, immediately judging it as utterly impossible and nonsensical. The past he buried at the end of the world, and the love for her emerald eyes he killed within himself so many ages ago was gone. That wasn't what plagued him today. It was something even worse. With a single movement of his fingers he called forth a weapon of pure energy, wielding it with his both gloved hands, ready to strike at whatever the universe decided to make him fight. And that was when he noticed it. With an almost silent whoosh, his left cheek burned with unimaginable pain, bringing clean the secret he'd held in for most of his life on it. The miniature black crown tattoo made itself visible once more, forcing his mind to race at a speed unknown to him for decades. It's them, he screamed to himself, panic beyond any logic and reason. It's over. They found me. He shuddered internally, drawing out all energy he had in his soul and body into his fingertips, bringing it into the patterns that laid his gloves and suit below. He was nothing more than pure focus, pure power, staring at the cord of what was most likely going to be his end. That's where it ends, he thought, silencing a scream of agony within. After Novak and Mab, this is my finale. Before his mind could finish the sentence, the universe gained two hands as if it tried to make his fear stop, and then it gained a full body. In the blink of an eye, the lack of anything before him turned into a young brown-haired woman, bags under her emerald eyes. She looked at him, seemingly asking for a lack of fear, condensing all that might and unimaginable power into an attempt to communicate with one of the people that made her life a nightmare for as long as she had lived. He could feel it wasn't an easy gesture for her to make, but the sheer desperation and exhaustion her being held made up for it. He thought. He swallowed hard. He shuddered upon realizing who that was that stood before him, feeling all that repressed guilt from ages before exploding onto his consciousness, no longer contained and chained down. Free once more. We need to talk, the woman said, barely holding back her tears. Later, silently at the edge of all that is. Don't worry, the thaumaturge said, grasping Josephine's hand in a stronger manner, trying to swallow all the suffering he caused without breaking down. They will understand, I'm sure of it. He chuckled nervously, blinking twice as if it would somehow force the doors before them open. He was very much not sure of it. By every single metric he could think of, what he was about to do was treason. As one of the leaders of the project tasked with hunting the woman that stood beside him down for over 20 years, he very much should not doing this. As a member of the SCP Foundation, nay, as one of the directors of one of its sites, he shouldn't be doing this either. And most importantly, as a reject of the Black Court, he should absolutely, under no circumstances, even if anything other meant certain death, ever be doing this. And yet, there he was, standing before the spire atop the universe within the Wanderer's library the Black Queens made theirs, side by side with a woman he swore to murder many decades ago. If he had to guess, he'd just say stupid decisions like this were part of his nature, but he was never the type to think of such things, and it was no time for philosophy. She didn't reply to his reassurance, instead wiping the sweat from her forehead. He could feel her stress and vary the essence of her being, filling the hall of the library around her with fear. He joined her in the silence, staring at the stone slabs of two doors leading to the tower that stood before them, praying for those that were beyond it to listen. He knew activating the distress call was stupid, even more so than coming here in person, but he was desperate, not for himself, not for his friends, but for someone he hunted for a majority of his life. But such was the beauty of Directive Alpha 1911, he figured, in one final attempt to calm himself down. You learn to change yourself and your approach towards the world alongside the Foundation. And hey, if all it had taken for her to forgive him was a long talk and desperation, then why wouldn't it be the same with the cord? The doors puffed as the unlocking of thaumaturgic runes protecting the room within from intruders snapped him out of his trance. He shuddered almost unnoticeably, and took the first step forward as the previously disguised, miniature tattoo of a black crown under his left eye materialized itself back into reality. After almost 30 years of hiding, she gazed directly into his eyes, hers as nervous as his. Upon seeing the gesture he nodded, as calmly as he could, and showed her to take another step, this time with him. She complied, one move at a time, The black and green kings entered the blindingly white corridor before them, ready for the worst. From the moment they crossed the threshold, they could feel the doors closing behind them in a way that could only mean it regarded them as the intruders it was meant to protect this place from. They didn't turn back, noticing them from within the dark hall at the end of the world. A single voice pierced the silence around them as they finally entered the throne room at the corridor's end. Daniel Ellison Ashworth, Allison Chow, Black Queen Iris, spat out angrily from atop her throne, seated among myriad others of her kind. Are you finally ready to answer for your crimes? Black Queen Iris, passing judgment. Alchia et al. Also here, I guess. Saint Alliston Cow, bringing light where there is none. Baseline. Godlike reality bender class 7. I think chased by her reality's foundation for not following their doctrines. Emotionally broken by the nightmare the jailers made her life be. Shunned away by those she wanted to protect and in desperate need of rest. Brought forward by the court despite its protests. By the king in black. Why is he even still allowed in following his activation of the signal? Because the news he wasn't actually dead got us by surprise. As much as I hate to let him in. Legally named Josephine. No surname, her parents were murdered. Of course she doesn't know her surname. Prerequisites. Native only to TL 1911. Despite whatever the hell they've going on, they're still a bunch of bastards. Aren't they? Indeed they are. Existence of an SCP Foundation seemingly redeeming itself, only to betray the hopes of people like her, plus the existence of mass reality bender murders, leading to the death of her parents, setting her on the path she ended up on, I guess. And of course, the existence of the traitorous Black King himself and, by extension, the queen that took care of him, and her betrayal. The court has already told you, she shouted once more, standing up from her seat of power. You are not welcome here. The gathering does not wish to hear from you, no matter how valuable the asset you're carrying may be to us. The entire hall was built around a circular portion him and Josephine were standing on, with an audience full of the uncountable black queens atop myriad seats, set up in such a way each of them could see the judge below them. Despite their number, they did not speak a single word, instead entirely focused on gazing into the souls of the intruders. Ashworth tried to speak up, coming forward, only to be interrupted by a bored tone, coming from a black-haired woman inhabiting one of the thrones above him, looking at her lazurite nails. Go away, we do not care for the girl, nor do we care for you. Josephine raised her eyebrow, giving Daniel a confused look. He cleared his throat, correcting his slightly longer black hair, and inhaling deeply. I understand. You don't understand anything. The towering voice of Allison Iris pierced his soul, making him back off slightly. You have demonstrated your loyalty when you ran away even after she saved you from the flames of your own home all those years ago. He shuddered, closing his eyes in an attempt to sway away the image of his parents' fate, the caretaking that followed, and her inevitable treason and death. She smiled, noticing his agony. You remember, don't you, how you repaid your saviors by joining the organization we were meant to destroy? She was practically shouting. He somehow found the courage within himself to respond. Please, he pointed at Josephine. For her, give me a second shot. Another queen, this time from behind him, and full of robotic augmentations, scoffed. You had your second chance when we allowed her to give up her seat for you after she betrayed us first. We won't make that mistake again. Our multiversal projects can't afford it? Not caring for his answer, she went back to reading something on her laptop, seemingly the schematics of some sort of cannon. He didn't know how to respond. You are useless to us, Iris continued, glancing at the duo with an infectious feeling of superiority. You have always been useless to us, and you will always be useless to us. There's only one thing I can say, with all this in mind. She paused for a second, looking around her fellow Allisons, only to grind a furious sentence out a moment later. Get out. As the thermometer just backed off again, he was suddenly stopped by the girl beside him. She looked directly in his gray eyes, and was the one to nod this time, taking a step forward, challenging the court with just her presence. He might be useless. She looked up at the billion queens above her, ready to answer to anything they could throw her against. But I don't have to. Vulnerability? Rejection. That's all it would take to utterly destroy her once more after she came here with him, hoping for acceptance. Iris raised her eyebrow, drawing attention to the crown-like tattoo below her deep, gray eyes. Josephine couldn't believe it took her this long to realize that each of the women present in the court had one of those. Despite all their differences, it seemed a constant throughout all manifestations, making all the dark monarchs into something more than just one person. For as little as she'd known them, Josephine thought it indeed perfectly fit their characters, no matter how seemingly different they were. And what would that be? Special girl, the queen asked, irony seeping from her lips. What can you offer us the 10 billion Allison Chaos present don't already possess? The reality bender smirked slightly, looking directly into the queen's eyes, and blinking twice. Her previously green irises snapped into pure purple in just a moment, letting the onkinesis within her out of its cage of masquerading. The smirk eventually turned into a grimace. Her eyes followed soon after. Power. Have you all utterly lost your mind? She's almost a god. Her kind doesn't take opposition or rejection too well, I'm afraid. The court collectively broke into laughter, barely believing the words it just witnessed. For a stranger to have such bravery, such audacity, it was unthinkable to the countless women gathered as one body. Yet somehow it filled them with laughter at the same time. But Josephine saw it much differently. For you see, through their tears of hilarity, the queens didn't quite notice a very simple yet entirely game-changing modification to their environment. Too busy to care about anything other than themselves, the court dared to not look at the girl for a single moment, and she used that to her advantage, channeling the frustration of broken childhoods and destroyed lives to conjure up unimaginable power. You're forgetting she's still only human. Do you really think it's beyond the capacity of the court to kill someone like her? Don't be ridiculous. With just a snap of her fingers, Josephine began to levitate, matching her eye level with that of the Iris Queen. The other caught on just seconds after, filling her very being with fear beyond comprehension. The court was filled with a scream, making the entire hall tremble with the power of the two voices that broke its silence. Cat Plusic, now we can Jew? The document the queens had been editing with their insights for as long as they'd been together was shaken too, forcing each of the Allisons to look for the cause of this disturbance. It inevitably brought their sight towards Josephine. Court of the Monarchs of Black, listen to my words. She spat out, continuing to move herself upward, a bright purple emanating from her eyes. For years uncounted, you'd been your own traitors? Even though neither Ashworth nor the queens thought they could be more surprised than they already were, their confusion and anger increased tenfold upon those words meeting their ears. When you first banded yourself many worlds ago, you swore to destroy the foundations of the multiversal compass, the chains imprisoning love as we know it. Tendrils of pure power expanded from her body, making their way towards each of the observers, save for the thaumaturge below. If the court wasn't paralyzed by shock, it perhaps might have stopped the structures entangling each of its members, forcing them to listen to the words of the demigod in front of them. You swore to kill all that stagnates, all that murders the hopes of change, the hopes of true peace. As if there were just one organism, the myriad women sitting in their thrones shuddered with fear, making their eyes burn with the purple of the reality bender. They tried to resist, but before her still not full power, they were nothing. And yet, all those years later, you betrayed your own virtues, becoming the very thing you swore to destroy. You refused the revolution you yourself are, forever ignorant to your hypocrisy. She raised her arms. For this, I, Josephine Elu, the reality bender, suddenly grunted in a mixture of both exhaustion and pain, snapping off her connection with the Allisons before her as the mental strain got to her, rendering her useless. The near goddess was strong, but controlling a billion multiversal escapees for longer than a single moment was beyond strength. Even for someone as powerful as her, she began to rapidly fall towards the floor, seemingly unconscious. The previously static from shock Ashworth immediately caught on. With just a few moves of his hands, he began to draw elaborate patterns around him, as if his fingers were chalk. As she was about to meet her end, the thaumaturge snapped his fingers, bringing the magic around him to life. The various shapes and circles he made extended, forming into clouds, in one final attempt to catch the one they were meant to protect. When they succeeded, he gently put her down on the cold floor below him. He'd never seen the court in a bigger shock, not even when the person that took care of him when he burned his house down dared to oppose them, saying this reality's foundation should not be destroyed. All those years ago, they all stood there, with not a single word to speak out, in utter and total incomprehension of what had just happened. When the various queens regained their senses, Iris looked down at him once more, this time with much more humiliation than he'd ever seen in all the time he'd known her. He repaid her with a similar look, but he felt no fear. Instead, his gray eyes were full of confidence. He smirked. So how will it be? Asterisk. Utility. None. Infinite power. Finally bringing us closer to our goal. Weapon like we'd never seen. Making the world ours. 00138666314 9,913,264 002,319,645. Friend: 3. Messianism, forcing belief into the hearts of the heretics. For what felt like millennia, the court spoke between itself. Myriad individuals from different backgrounds, realities, and contexts, each connected with one single goal in mind like always, yet this time weirdly different. For the first time since their first meeting, they thought not to destroy the foundation, no. They thought about change. It all began with that idiot and her pupil, one voice said, angry at the entire concept even being considered. We needn't have ever let them in. By this logic, should we have never let any of us in either? Another responded, trying to bring reason into the discussion. I'm beginning to think maybe she had a point. For hours without end the talks would go on, making the monarchs that participated argue with each other. For the first time in ages, they all had their reasons, of course. It wouldn't be normal for uncounted millions to simply agree with one of them that leaving this dimension alone would be wise. Ultimately, however, they were all meaningless, no matter their truth, for the multiverse had already agreed on the fight's outcome before their worlds were even formed. And after a while, they agreed on their destined path to, forever unintentionally following the fate that put them all where they sat in the first place. With just one word spoken out by Iris, they all fell silent. Knowing it was decided, there was no further need for anything, for it was done. What followed was a single edit to the new spheric-driven file they all had access to, making the screens of their countless devices blink once more. This light pierced the darkness of the spire and their hearts alike, making both alive for just 1 second longer than usual. But it did not make them blink with hatred and scheming, no, for a single moment in reality. It broke their cycle of anger, bringing surprise to the queens for the second time this evening. Despite the countless and unique women the Court of the Black was made up of, despite all its experience it shared among itself, despite all the stories and knowledge it stole from itself, and the library it made its own, yet it made their stone-cold souls blink with something they were yet to know, for the first time in more than a century. Utility. None. Infinite power. Finally bringing us closer to our goal. Weapon like we'd never seen. Making the world ours. 00138666314 9,913,264 002,319,645. Friend: 3. Messianism, forcing belief into the hearts of the heretics. A vessel for change. Black Queen Iris, passing judgment. Alchia et al. Also here, I guess. Saint Alliston Cow, bringing light where there is none. Green Queen Josephine, reporting in. It made them blink with change. A strange daydream is sweet as poison. Branches hub of the Germanophone branch. A strange daydream is sweet as poison. Rating, +3. X Isabel feels a bit sorry for the man. He had been particularly kind to her, and otherwise seems to be an emphatic person with a lot of charity. Isabel therefore makes a special effort to put his loyalty to the test. The emotion vor begins to spin a life story slowly, and with a strange tenderness. Isabel notices a pale child looking at her in extreme confusion. Isabel draws her brows together, which should be illogical according to dream logic. This child takes the role of her daughter in the dream, but the girl does not look anything like Isabel or her victim. In this dream, they do not adopt children. Isabel thinks hard. According to the process of elimination and the circumstantial evidence, the girl they seem to have named Elizabeth must be an intruder in her dream world. Isabel doesn't like food envy, regardless of whether it's the first time. Elizabeth has apparently come to the same conclusions and glares at her disapprovingly. Isabel has long since forgotten her victim. With her left hand, she made a shooing gesture, accompanied by KSH. The child is flabbergasted at the humiliating treatment and in response shoves the adult, which is not so effective when someone was only half her size. It is Isabel's turn to be surprised. Then she lifts Elizabeth up. You obviously don't disappear so easily? Then I'll take you somewhere where you won't be in my way. Elizabeth has discovered that Isabel's idea of being out of the way is a children's room. She looks around to see if she can find anything useful. In the cupboard? Under the bed? Resignedly, she sits down on the carpet and plucks at fringes. That's the downside of sneaking into dreams. She can't make any big changes. Isabel is proud of herself. She solved the problem at the first attempt. Now she occupies herself with something mundane like cooking. This distracts her a little before she spins on. Isabel doesn't even notice what she is preparing, so so meaningless is it in the dream world. The pattering of small feet can be heard faintly. Isabel turns around disapprovingly. The child is sitting at the kitchen table, her head resting on it, facing away from Isabel. As long as Elizabeth doesn't disturb her, she can play along with Isabel's performance. After 5 minutes, when Isabel had turned back again, she heard feet on the tiles again. She looks down. Elizabeth clings to Isabel's skirt, as is typical for a child. Comma, 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 comma. The rest of the day, which is still Isabel's dreamscape, the child followed the woman. For the victim of the two, this did not have to be so extraordinary. Surprisingly, the two emotional eaters coped well with the situation. Elizabeth generated the negative aura that Isabel used to give her host a dramatic life. In fact, until the host Onuroyce returned home, all went well and the two even played a round of a card game with other dream beings who had strayed in to join them, and willingly took on the roles of supporting characters. Gosh, what weather it is today. Isabel and Elizabeth looked to the Onuroy, puzzled by his statement. Neither of the two had noticed a minute or two ago the storm that now envelopes the dream structure. The ground begins to shake. The wind whistles around the unreal corners of the non-existent building. The light flickers. A buzzing hum is audible, apparently coming from the entity that seems to be the only source of light outside. Something large and massive glides by the windows, like an aquatic predator. The predatory dream entity creates ripples in surreality through its sheer presence. Isabel feels herself losing control of her dream world. She has heard of such nightmare constructs, and knew that she was almost literally a small fish in comparison. She flings herself out of the dream, inadvertently dragging Elizabeth along as a passenger. The host's shadow can only witness, with a silent scream, the oversized newt opening its plump lips and sucking him in like a worm. I have a negative announcement and I have a positive announcement. Elias stares at his opposite for a long time, trying to figure out what is going on. It is understandable that Elias is a little confused when a thought bubble comes out of the shoulders of a suit instead of a neck with a head. The dream entity waits with angelic patience for a response. Which one would you like to hear first? He asked in his sonorous voice. Please the negative one first. Then hopefully the good one can cheer me up. Interesting choice. The message is, you're dead. Elias swallows hard. Dead. He repeats. Yes, two parasitic entities, we call them anomalies, have unfortunately both chosen to select you as their host. 2. Yes, this is not directly your cause of death, but I doubt you would be interested in the details. So this is. No, for a second the entity's voice rose. I'm sorry. I have certain trouble understanding that you corporeal and incorporeal are always fixated on an afterlife. Then what would be the positive news? The dream entity straightens his 3 bow ties, which somehow don't fall off despite the lack of a neck. They are taking this well. Pleasant news for us? The good news is, now that you are a true Onuroy, we would like to hire you as a member of the Foundation Collective. A short pause follows. When do you want to start, Air Bomber?
want to see something cool?